Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to show you some real world use cases of agent to agent or A2A standard being used in healthcare. Now, when we talk about A2A, we are talking about two machines or bots talking to each other. In the healthcare, usually one of these agents is something that is connected to a user through an app, typically a clinician using an EHR through an app, but this could also be a researcher or some other scenarios. And the other agent is something like a knowledge base or a database or a set of policies that this agent needs to talk to and connect with. And the key benefit of using the A2A protocol versus another protocol like MCP is that in A2A, once the user gives the prompt, the agents can talk to each other and figure out a lot of things themselves before the user really needs to intervene. I know this all sounds very futuristic, so I'm going to actually walk you through a demo and then I will talk a little bit more about how it works behind the scenes. Now, to show you a demo for A2A, I obviously need two agents. So I will be using 𝗸𝘪𝘆 as one of the agents. It is an application that has been developed by 𝗔𝗴𝗲𝗍𝗪, which allows you to simulate various healthcare scenarios where an agent could be a knowledge database or a policy or clinical trial protocols and other things. For the other agent, I will be using our app called Prompt Opinion integrated with 𝗖𝘃. Prompt Opinion is a healthcare platform for developing different kinds of AI applications that can be integrated into EHRs, other systems, or standalone solutions. I won't go into the details of Prompt Opinion for this video. I'm only going to be focusing on the A2A features and showing how the integration works. So with that, let's jump into the demo. Okay, so I am on the 𝗸𝘪𝘆 app, and as you can see, this has kind of various different scenarios that are listed that you can test with for A2A scenarios. I'm going to be focusing on this clinical trial eligibility, but most of the things that I'm showing can be applied to prior authorization scenarios or some of the other ones mentioned in here. And you can go and read actually how this scenario is structured. The key thing in here is that this is basically structured that there is a trials management or a system or a set of protocols, and then which is available through an agent, and then an agent from working from the other side can connect to this agent and go back and forth to find out if a patient meets the criteria or not. And you can actually see that there is a trial that is hard coded here where there are some inclusion exclusion criterias. Again, these are just mocked up in here, but this can also be coming from an actual PDF protocols where it can be extracted and then made available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on run on this scenario. And this is kind of where I can say that how do I want to actually connect to this particular agent. So I will be bringing in my clinician agent, which is like my app connected to 𝗖𝘃. And I'm saying is that I will be using a client and I am going to be using the A2A protocol. So with those three options selected, I can click on this button that says open room. And what this has basically done is that it has created an agent that is now ready to listen to some other agent basically talking to it and trying to match a clinical trial. So now I'm going to switch over to the other app and see how we are actually going to connect to this particular agent. So I'm going to go to this tab, which has our Prompt Opinion app. And again, as I said, this app is connected to 𝗖𝘃. I've already kind of done the integration. I will be using like a standalone workflow if you're familiar with the Smart on Fire workflows, but everything I'm doing in here can also be done as an EHR launch. So I'm just going to go ahead and log into 𝗖𝘃, just like what we do in a Smart on Fire workflow. So let me go ahead and do that quickly in here. And it will bring me to a screen of all the recent patients that I have accessed from this app. So I'm going to go into JSON and it is going to bring me to a chat screen. So I'm just going to go and say that I want to start a new chat session with the EHR. And then what I'm going to just type in here is I'll just start with something very generic to say, summarize the patient for me. So there is nothing too different in here. You must have seen this in chat many times. Basically, it's like there's a chatbot in here which is using LLM to going and getting the patient history and summarizing it. The one difference that I have put in here is that I've actually uploaded a couple of custom documents. So there is a PDF that I've uploaded that has some of those criteria for that particular trial. And the reason is because we are testing like the language interoperability. So I'm really trying to extract the data out of free text rather than extracting data from like the FHIR resources. We can obviously do that and it's a lot easier, but the MCP server, or the way I'm connecting with this EHR, is that I'm using the FHIR document references and extracting that data from there, which kind of then makes it like that there is unstructured data on both sides, and that's like the worst case scenario, and then you can always get better than that. So with that, I'm going to ask it a second prompt in here, and I'm going to say is that, is the patient eligible for any trials? Yeah, so it came back and said is like, it's not eligible because obviously I haven't connected it to the protocol agent that we are talking about. But the reason it still kind of responds and saying there is not there, because we also can be used as an agent itself. So it does have its own repository. But since I haven't added anything in there, it is basically telling me that, there are no trial protocols. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my room and I'm going to copy this particular URL that is here, that is called as the agent card URL. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to go into the settings of my workspace in here, and I'm going to say that I want to basically add a new agent card URL. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it, and I'm going to give it a name in here that this is 𝗵𝗵𝗏. So basically now to my app, I have made an agent available that this can talk to and connect to. So if I go and click on this settings button in here, I need to refresh my screen. So let me just refresh my screen. And if I go in there, it will say that, it basically gives me an option that I can activate an agent. So again, I can activate multiple agents or different scenarios. So there are different ways I can connect it. But I'm just going to say that I want to connect with, 𝗵𝗵𝗏. So with that actually set up, I'm going to ask the question again, is the patient eligible for any trials? So now what you will see is as this back and forth goes on, the bot that we have, the agent that we have on our side, which we call PO, is actually going back and forth with the agent on the other side. And it started with basically sending a message to say, hey, requesting clinical trial eligibility. Then this is the 𝗵𝗵𝗏 basically responding the message to say that, I need to confirm that this patient has this diagnosis. And then what this bot is basically doing is it's actually going through the documentation, going through all the notes that it has, extracting individual documentation, going back and forth and completing that section to see what all it can handle on its own. And at some point where it cannot find something, then it kind of stops. So it says in there, to complete trial eligibility screening, the research coordinator needs to confirm if you are currently pregnant, breastfeeding, or planning to conceive. So I'm just going to go say no to this. And again, you will see that it will pass that information back to the agent. And this conversation is, going back and forth to kind of, go in and complete that particular trial in there. So again, I mean, like it's now asking me if there is a medular, because I couldn't find any negative history of in there. So it's actually asking me that. And if I can let go it for a couple of times. And it is sometimes kind of interesting depending on which model you are using. It will actually read that in history on its own, and sometimes it will like try to confirm it. But now you can actually see that it has gone through the whole process and said that yes, it meets all the exclusion criteria, meets all the inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria. And now you can actually go through the next step. And if I go back to my room, you can actually see that all this conversation is also visible on the other side. So you can actually see like what was this agent basically sending to that agent and what was the agent basically responding back. And all of this information kind of going back and forth. So that is again a very quick demo of showing how the two agents talk to each other, and the user did not have to be kind of responding to each thing. I mean, whatever the agent could find on its own, it found it and then it responded, and then I just had to intervene when there was something really that was not clear from the patient chart. Now, to set some context in here, these are still an early stage concept of how it can work, and there are a lot of things that can be improved here. For example, one thing it always I realize is that it asked me if the patient was pregnant. And the patient was male, but since I'd only shared the documents and in the document there is no mention of gender, it felt the need to ask that. Again, there can be a lot of fine tuning that can be done on both sides of the agents, and that can be improved in there. But let's go ahead and take a look at exactly what was happening in the back end when this flow was going on. Okay, so here is a high level kind of breakdown into the two agents or the components of the two agents. So on one side we had the 𝗸𝘪𝘶, and the other side we had a prompt opinion app that was integrated with the EHR, which was being used by the clinician. So what the flow here was is like, the clinician asked first a question. That question went into the app, and the app went and connected with the EHR, extracted some data and gave that data back to the app. That was within the app scope, and that's how it was returned. And then when we asked it the next question, which was about the clinical trials, it basically went in there, and then the app responded and said is that, hey, I don't have any tool or anything in there, but I do have this connection to an agent, and I can pass it to that agent to see that if it can actually connect to the other agents to find something that is available. And that's kind of what it happens, is it passes that call to the agent that was configured. Now on the other hand side, the 𝗸𝘪𝘶 agent did some initial testing, whatever it is, and it basically crafts a response which is sent back to the agent. That response is then again sent back to the EHR to extract it. At this point, again, the user is not being bothered. The EHR is just responding to that data, and then that data is going back to the agent, and that's kind of where the conversation is going back and forth. But at some point, like when that some information came back, it realized that it needed some user input. At that point, the user entered some response, and then the cycle started again. And out of all of this, the key thing to note is this middle part of the conversation. That could have gone for many cycles, depending on kind of the workflow. In like a prior authorization, this could be like many back and forth requests of what the other agent needs, and this is basically what is all under A2A. So that's kind of the specification that is helping connect to that, so that I can actually go and connect to any other agent too that follows that same specification and can be easily integrated into the solution. Now, one of the common confusion that happens in there is that, hey, if it's A2A, now we don't need MCP, or where is the overlap between MCP and A2A? So couple points to kind of mention in here. In the use case in here, when I was connecting to the EHR, I was actually connecting through an MCP server. It's a very limited use case MCP server that we built that only uses the document references. It can easily be activated to use other resources too, but we are only extracting document references to kind of keep the scenario to limited use cases. But we have other kind of MCP servers that can be used to extract the other data. And then the other thing to note is that, again, we know that in this case, 𝗸𝘪𝘶 did not have any other, tools, but the other agent could be using MCP server or could be using internal logic. It really doesn't matter. The key idea in here is that MCP server is something that is, being leveraged internally to tools to get the data. But then the agent to agent is more about independent agents that are, kind of separated out. And the benefit again here is coming from is, if you notice in this case, we have two different LLMs that are working on both sides, which means each of these LLMs could have their own system prompts. They could be very specialized in what they do. This as LLM is specialized in, connecting to agents, getting the EHR data. That LLM could be specialized in, to kind of manage the clinical trials. There could be another LLM specialized for prior authorization. But the idea being is that, you can have separation and specialization and then bring all these things together to make more powerful use cases. Hopefully that gives you a good overview of how A2A can be used in real world use cases. We will be testing this app at the upcoming HL7 Connectathon this weekend. So if you are at the Connectathon, would love to talk to you and see if you are interested in testing it together. Or otherwise, if you are interested in piloting the application or you have agents that you want to kind of test together with, would love to discuss and talk more. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.